Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby, where we help women be empowered, intentional mothers. This podcast is best enjoyed sipping tea or taking a stroll in nature. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be substituted for professional psychological or medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, midwife, or other qualified health provider with any questions about your personal situation, health, or medical condition.
Welcome back to My Body, My Bump, My Baby. I am here with my friend Autumn today, and we're going to talk about her birth experiences because she has had 3 wonderful births of 3 beautiful babies. And a little bit about Autumn is we met, she's from the town where we live now, basically.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Mostly.
I've been here a while.
Yeah. And we met in a coffee shop during COVID. 2 of our littles are the same age. And we just got to talking a little bit about the birth experience that we had in the coffee shop. And then we just have a lot of the same beliefs and views, which I've loved, especially because we were in the coffee shop at the same time during COVID.
And you birthed your baby where I had care with my first baby.
Yes.
So
yes, exactly.
We bonded over that.
Yes.
We got
exactly. And I was like, okay, she's the same
Mm-hmm.
mindset. So this is going to work out.
Yeah.
My sister was actually the one that said, you should talk to her. She has little kids your age, and they don't have masks on.
Yes. Yeah, we bonded immediately.
Yeah.
So.
And so Autumn has had 3 births, like I mentioned, and she has had like the whole range of experiences, which is really cool. Especially, I mean, you were talking about getting into birth work maybe later on in life and how that does give you a lot of experiential credibility.
Yeah, it does.
In that.
Yeah, I've kind of navigated everything. So.
Yeah, all of the questions that come up, the experiences. So let's just jump in and get started with Ira's birth and how he came about.
Yeah, totally. So I was with my husband. We were dating, so I guess he was my boyfriend at the time. We became pregnant in early 2018. We did end up having a miscarriage. That was really unexpected. It was kind of like a surprise pregnancy. So that was something we were kind of settling into, and then we miscarried really quickly after we found out. So it kind of just felt like a roller coaster of emotions. It was hard, I think, just processing it. We did kind of come to the conclusion that we wanted a family. We were kind of ready to start trying. So we did. So we just kind of, went about our lives and tried, to I guess not try. Or what did they say?
To not try.
Yeah, exactly. And we did end up becoming pregnant again that fall. I think it was like early September 2018. We found out that we were pregnant again. I think that the miscarriage really, I had this belief like maybe I couldn't get pregnant or maybe that something was wrong with my body and that's why I miscarried. So just like becoming pregnant again was a relief in itself. But then I think I had like underlying anxiety throughout almost the entire pregnancy about I think just like my body's ability to birth the baby. And I didn't really expect that. I think that was something I wasn't really prepared to feel. But I always wanted to have a natural birth. My mom actually is a little bit similar to me. So she had a C-section with me. I was a breech baby. So she had a C-section. It was the 90s, and they were kind of just like, she's breech. You should just schedule a C-section. So she did. But she must have had a pretty good doctor because he did encourage her to have a VBAC after that. So I have 3 younger sisters, and they're all VBAC babies. My youngest sister was born, she was born in the hospital, but it was completely medication-free. And she was actually posterior and almost 10 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but my mom says it was like her best birth. And I remember growing up and she would always say that. Like, she felt so clear-headed. She was so, like, bonded with her. She said she, like, had the baby and then she, like, had a cheeseburger and it was, like, the best thing of her life. And just, like, hearing her talk about how wonderful it was to birth in that way really, I think, inspired me to want to do that myself. So I had watched, like, The Business of Being Born. I had, like, dipped my toe into the water concerning, like, natural birth or, like, medication-free birth. And I knew that was what I wanted to do with my first. I think I guess I didn't really have a lot of direction. I ended up going to see an OB for my first appointment, actually. Oh. I think it was around like 8 or 10 weeks. It's whenever they do the dating ultrasound. Mm-hmm. So I went in. I think maybe part of the reason I went the more medical route too was because I had that fear, and I was like, maybe I should see a real doctor. So I ended up doing that, but I did not. Like, I went to that first appointment, and I remember I left, and I was like, I don't like how this feels. I remember I think the OB came in for like 2 minutes and then left. Like, the rest of it was like the nurses and just like the people in the office that I was dealing with. I felt like it wasn't very personalized. They barely had any time for me. So we left, and I told my husband, I guess he was my boyfriend at the time still, but I told him that I just wasn't feeling it, and so we researched other options. Our insurance covered, they were starting a birth center. It was the first birth center in town where we live, but they were still doing home births because they were a home birth team prior to starting the birth center. So I contacted them. I told them that I wanted to do a home birth. And they said that I was basically like right at the cutoff for their last home births before they transferred completely to just birth center births. So I established care with them. Things felt good. We went to the appointments at the birth center. I got a 20-week ultrasound. And I think they diagnosed me with, like, possible, what is it called when your placenta's close to the cervix? Yeah, so possible placenta previa. They wanted me to come back in for another ultrasound. I think it was at 32 weeks to just make sure the placenta had moved, which it did. I think that stressed me out a little bit. But when I went home and did a bunch of research, it came up that they move like 90%.
Yeah. And if it doesn't move, you actually need something else.
Yeah.
Another intervention.
Yeah. But it moved, of course. And everything seemed great. And it was great. I mean, I felt pretty good. I had morning sickness kind of throughout the whole pregnancy. I never actually, like, threw up, but I just didn't feel great. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was just excited to have a baby. He was so wanted. I didn't know it was a he.
I was going to say, did you know?
We didn't find out. No, we wanted it to be a surprise. But I had a feeling that he was a boy. So, we had some boy names picked out. We had a couple girl names, but I was pretty sure he was a boy, so I didn't put too much thought into them. So, yeah, I got to kind of towards the end of my pregnancy. We went to do my 37-week appointment where they come to your home. So the midwife came. We kind of just went over, like, what the plan was, made sure I had all my birthing supplies. And then when she went to, like, palpate the baby, she had a really hard time figuring out, like, where the baby was. It definitely took longer than all of our other appointments. You know, usually they'd go in and they'd be like, oh, here's his head. Do you want to feel it? You know, he's facing this way and whatnot. And then she just spent a lot of time moving him around or like feeling for him. And then like finally at the end, she was like, oh no, I think this is his head and I think this is his butt. And, you know, maybe if you want, you can just get an ultrasound at your next appointment at the birth center. And so I was like, okay. And I was like, you know what? I asked her, I was like, why should I get the ultrasound? And she was like, well, you don't have to, but if your baby's breech, and he starts coming out breech when you're at the birth center, if there's time, we will transfer you to the hospital. And that sounded horrible to me. I was like, I don't want to be like pushing out a baby and then having you be like, oh no, you need to go to the hospital now and transferring me. So
if there's time, by the time the buttocks comes out,
that's kind of
luck.
how I felt too. But I think I was a little naive. I didn't know exactly.
Yeah.
Like
you don't like no one knows that, and then you start just digging.
Yes. So I went to my appointment the following week, and they did the ultrasound. And as soon as they put that like ultrasound like wand on the top of my belly, they're like, oh, there's his head. So I think I was like 38 weeks at that appointment. And I think he must have flipped like in between my 36 and 37 week appointments, which is pretty rare for them to flip that late in the game. But pretty much after she found out he was breached, they were just like, we can't like be your care provider anymore. So that was like really, it felt really destabilizing to me. Like these people that I had had my care with my entire pregnancy were now telling me that I had to transfer care. And I asked them, you know, I was like, what are my options? And they were kind of like, well, there's a couple breech-friendly OBs. One of them I couldn't even find where he worked. So that one was kind of out. Like I couldn't even like figure out how to contact him. And then the other one was a hospitalist in Denver, so he like only had shifts at the hospital. He doesn't.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were basically like, you can try to get him, but it's like you would just have to hope that you went into labor and he was on call or at the hospital already, and then drive all the way to Denver, which is like an hour and a half from us. Yeah. And that sounded like not ideal. So that kind of, you know, left me asking like what else I could do. They gave me all these like natural things I could try, like the spinning babies exercises, acupuncture. I'm trying to think what else we did. Chiropractic care. Yeah, we did pulsatilla. We did the moxibustion, all the things.
But you're like, I'm already 38 weeks. There's not much space in here.
Mm-hmm. So we tried all the things. I was going to like acupuncture appointment, then the next day chiro, then acupuncture. Like I just felt like it was pretty miserable. Like I was trying to do every single thing I could to try to turn him, and he just wasn't really budging. They told me that I should schedule a consult for an external cephalic version. Or an ECV. So I got a couple recommended OBs. I picked one that was in Castle Rock because that's not as far as Denver from us. I went to my appointment with her. We did our ultrasound, and she told me that ECVs have about like a 50-ish% success rate, which didn't make me feel great. I just felt like everything was being thrown on me, and it was like the last weeks of my pregnancy. I was really emotional. It just felt so like it just was such a bummer. So I guess my placenta was anterior, and because of his size and because of how late I was in my pregnancy, she gave me like even worse odds of it being successful. So I called my husband and kind of talked through our options. And I was like, well, I can ask her about doing a C-section and see if she would be open to doing like a gentle C-section. Because my other option was waiting to go into labor, and then, you know, going to one of our local hospitals and hoping that I ended up with like a decent OB to do a C-section with. Mm-hmm. And that sounded not something I wanted to chance. Because we all know that, when you end up at the hospital, you don't get to pick who your doctor is.
Or what's done in the cesarean.
Yes. Yeah. And I had actually done like a hospital tour. I don't know if the birth center recommended it or if I had read it somewhere, but they were like, just do a hospital tour to like make yourself comfortable and familiar if you do have to transfer to the hospital. So I did. And I remember I was asking them about gentle C-sections, and they had no idea what I was talking about. I asked them about clear drapes, like to do a clear drape. And she was like, well, I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but I think we have some somewhere. And it just like felt so off-putting. I was like, I do not want to give birth here. So the OB that did the consult for the ECV was really, really sweet. She listened to all my concerns. She was very much like, we can do whatever you want to do. She wasn't comfortable doing like a vaginal breech birth, obviously. But I talked to her about gentle C-sections, and she was like, I've never done one, but I'm completely on board. And I'll talk to some people that have. And I talked to her about like vaginal seeding, because that was something that was really important to me.
Were you able to do that?
I wasn't. So I ended up being strep B positive. And so because I was strep B positive, she was like, A, I've never done vaginal seeding before, and B, I'm a little bit nervous doing it when you have strep B. So I wasn't like too upset, because I kind of understood that like if I was strep B positive, it was on the record, and if something happened, like it could come back on her. But I did really want to do that, because I had read about it. I'm a C-section baby. I have allergies and immune stuff, and I'm sure part of that is because I didn't get, exposed to my mother's microbiome in the way that I should have been. So we just kind of talked. I talked about what I wanted to do for my C-section. I wanted a clear drape. I wanted to do immediate skin to skin. I didn't want to be separated from my baby. And at the hospital in Castle Rock, they were like pretty much on board with everything. And they were like, typically we try not to separate you anyways. So I feel like they were already pretty friendly towards that kind of care. So after kind of thinking about it for a bit, we decided that we would just schedule a C-section. I think I was 40 weeks when we scheduled it. We scheduled it. It was May 6th. It was Monday. We drove up really early in the morning. We got there. They like hook you up to an IV and, get you all ready. Another thing I was like really adamant about is I wanted to walk into the OR and not be like wheeled in. They let me do that. They let my doula come back with me, which I guess isn't typical at C-sections. Everyone was really, really wonderful and supportive. I got to play music in the OR.
How did you learn about a gentle cesarean, or where did you learn about it?
I think that I feel that I think at the birth center they made it was like mandatory that we do a birth class. Like a birth prep class.
And they talked about it.
And I think they talked that was like an option.
Okay, cool.
For people to look into if you did end up having a cesarean.
We've talked a little bit about it on this podcast, but I think that's actually something that would be a great full episode, going through what it specifically is. Did you have then the all of the the wires
I had
on your back?
do the wires on my back. I made sure that my hands weren't strapped down. I know they do that
Cool,
sometimes, which I just think is insane.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so they just made it so it was really, really easy to pass the baby to me and then keep baby with me from that moment forward.
Did Ira come out, like, I don't know, how did he come out? Did you watched it happen?
Yes, I did watch it happen. So they like cut me open. They grabbed like one leg and then they grabbed the other leg. And then, because he was really upside down in there. So it wasn't even like butt first. It was like his little legs
So his
came
foot,
out.
he would have been a foot length. Yeah.
Yeah. So they grabbed him, and then I guess he was just like really far up there. I remember it was a gentle C-section, but they like had to tug on him a bit. It was probably that he wasn't fully baked. I think I found out later I have long pregnancies.
Yes.
So I think that he's probably still had some time. He probably hadn't dropped.
Yeah, you think he was probably around like like what we think of a 38 weeks?
Yes.
Versus,
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So so they had to tug on him quite a bit, but then they got him out. He cried. Patrick told me that he was a boy, and it was just amazing. I mean, I knew already, but
Oh yeah, I was like, wait, did you see his
amazing
butt first, or?
Yeah, no, he was butt first towards me, but
Yeah.
Patrick saw him, and
But you're like, I just knew intuitively.
yeah. So they just kind of they took him out. They kind of set him to the side to use the
Nasal syringe.
Yeah, the syringe to get the fluid out, and then they passed him to me, put him on my chest. He was on my chest for probably like a minute or two, and then they did end up taking him to the warmer, and I didn't really know why. So Patrick went with him because I was also very adamant, like if anything happened to baby, my husband would be with baby. But my doula was able to stay with me, and she was like right by my head. So that was probably like 2 whole minutes. It was really cool. They had a screen above me, and it was like connected to a video of the warmer. So I got to watch him at the warmer the entire time that he was away from me. So that was pretty cool. I got to see him the whole time. You know, I wasn't like, where's my baby? What's going on with
How
him?
long was he away from you?
I really think it was only like a minute or 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they pretty much just like rubbed him really good, and he started really crying, and then he had enough oxygen at that point.
Yeah, when you said whole time, I was like, oh, I don't know, that is cool, but
Yeah.
I'd be a little scared, or like a
I
little bit like,
I didn't like it. That was for sure.
You'd feel like
if my
lost.
doula wasn't there, like telling me that everything was fine, I think that I probably would have started to panic a bit. But since she was reassuring me, I was like, okay, nothing's wrong. And then they brought him back to me, and then he was just perfect, and he never left me after that point. He actually breastfed before we even like left the OR. So he, just laid on my chest, and my husband was right there with me. They stitched me up. We went back to our recovery room. I think you stay in the recovery room for like 2 hours just while they like monitor your vitals, and the couple hours after surgery. And then after that, we went to like our, maternity room. And then I had a 48-hour hospital stay, and I went home.
Okay.
So nothing really crazy happened. It was a really straightforward C-section and recovery. My husband did have to go back to work, so that was a little bit difficult. I mean, you're recovering from surgery, and you're not supposed to do any heavy lifting, and you're like taking care of a baby, which wasn't amazing to be doing, having a huge incision. But I don't know, it was just magical. We were just so happy to finally meet him, and it just was amazing. And he was a very sweet baby. I mean, he didn't sleep, and he did all the normal baby things, but we just had so much fun. It felt like we waited a really long time for him, even though it wasn't. It wasn't that long.
Like you'd been waiting forever, but you just didn't know that.
Exactly, yeah. So, we just... breastfeeding it felt really easy to me. I was very lucky in that I never had any issues. I think at the hospital they did tell me that he had a tongue tie and a lip tie, but we never ran into any problems breastfeeding. Oops, sorry.
We do have baby Val with us as well.
He has grabby hands.
And so your experience, it seems like even though it changed to what your original plans were, you were able to dictate a lot of your choices in the experience you had.
Yeah, and I think that's why I ended up coming to like a peaceful place with the planned C-section is because it was on my terms. I got to choose my doctor. I felt like I was honored and respected the whole entire time for like what my wishes were. And I think that's what I was really afraid of. At one point I remember talking to the midwife and being like, okay, so what happens if I go into labor and I go in and I'm just like, I'm having this baby vaginally? And she was like, you can do that, but it would make me nervous if you got a doctor who was feeling very nervous and had never delivered a breech baby, because there are certain maneuvers and certain rules about delivering breech babies that OBs are not familiar with.
They're not trained in it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Midwives are, which is...
Well, and that's what she said. She's like, we deliver breech babies all the time on accident.
Yeah.
And we do training to deliver breech babies because it happens sometimes. OBs don't typically do that training. Yeah.
They have surgical.
Exactly. Yeah. So that didn't feel good when she told me that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we're nixing that idea. I think, too, it was my first baby. I had a miscarriage. I was still really insecure about my body's ability to have and birth a baby. So I think I was hypersensitive to anyone's like doubt or anyone's concern regarding the birth of my baby. So I think that at the time that was like the best choice for me. You know, looking back, I do wish that I would have had more options. I wish that there were more OBs that were comfortable doing breech. Even in the few years he's been born, they're now...
Like Castle Rock has one.
Castle Rock's doing breech births. Denver's doing more breech births. So that's pretty cool. So I do wish that I would have had those options available to me. But, you know, we did the best with what we had. Yeah. And I was lucky. I have heard people's C-section stories, like emergency C-sections, or just, you know, ones with OBs that aren't as open as mine was. And I feel very grateful that I had such a great experience. I 100% had that moment when I saw him where I was like, oh my God, that's my baby, and I love him. You know, I know some people who have C-sections, maybe that like chemical release doesn't happen, like that happens in a vaginal birth, but I felt like that, you know, that happened for me. I just felt so bonded to him from the moment I laid eyes on him, and it was absolutely amazing. So,
and the experience, I think, has also shaped you as a mother and human being too, especially with the progression of your birth experiences too now.
Yes, yeah.
And knowledge that you've gained around it.
Yeah, I learned so much. And like I said, I thought I knew a lot about birth. And then like throughout my experiences and throughout just like really digging into it, I just was like, I didn't know anything. I was so naive and like unprepared for this whole entire world that I was stepping into. So yeah. So he was born. We breastfed.